Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. So today we're looking at one of literature's most recognizable, yet honestly, frequently misunderstood figures. I mean, when you think of Quasimodo from The Hunchback of Notre Dame, you probably picture this quirky, isolated guy who just so happens to live up in the bell tower of a very famous church, right? But what if I told you he isn't just a tenant renting out the attic? Quasimodo was actually designed to be a deliberate, living, breathing reflection of the Notre Dame Cathedral itself.
Okay, let's jump right in with the actual words of the author, Victor Hugo, written way back in 1831. Hugo literally wrote that Quasimodo's physical shape fit directly into the cathedral. He said he encrusted himself in it, so to speak. It's an amazing visual, right? This establishes a deeply rooted, almost symbiotic physical and emotional connection between the man and the building. They aren't just sharing a zip code here. Their identities are completely interwoven.
Section 1. The Fragmented Heart. A cathedral in decay. To really wrap our heads around this connection, we actually have to travel back to post-revolution France. In the early 19th century, Paris had totally neglected its architectural jewel. Notre Dame was literally rotting away, just falling apart piece by piece. And here's a wild fact. Hugo wrote his epic novel specifically to save this building. He was basically urging Parisians to revere this piecemeal, surviving architecture as the true fragmented heart of French identity. And this beautifully illustrates this fascinating psychological framework we call wholeness. Now, wholeness doesn't mean perfection. Not at all. It's an imagined complete collection of parts, often fragmented or completely imperfect, that manages to function as a single entity. Hugo was practically begging France to look at this unideal, constantly rebuilt, scarred cathedral and see a complete, valid soul. And, well, that brings us directly to our protagonist, who embodies this exact same concept.
Section 2. Mirrors of the Anomalous. The Man and the Monument.
So, Hugo needed a human mirror to sit at the dead center of this architectural anomaly, and that is why he gave us Quasimodo. Fun fact, that name roughly translates to almost merely. Literally from his very name, he's defined as something incomplete, a person existing way outside the bounds of the expected norm. And the comparison Hugo makes is just striking. The cathedral is described as piecemeal, cut to pieces, rebuilt. Basically a totally anomalous body of mashed together architectural styles. And right next to it, Quasimodo is described as incomplete, hunchbacked, deaf, and almost. Hugo was drawing a massive, direct parallel here. The chaotic, surviving architecture of the building and the resilient, anomalous body of our protagonist, they are one and the same.
Section 3. Finding Voice in Stone. A Self-Constructed Society.
Now, because of his anomalous body, Quasimodo is completely rejected by the normative outside world, and he's totally isolated by his caretaker, Claude Frillo. But denied human interaction, he does something absolutely incredible. He turns to the architecture of Notre Dame to form his own perfectly equitable community. The cathedral essentially becomes a living society for him, completely replacing the human interactions he's denied. The bells become his voice, speaking for him daily to the outside world. The gargoyles, which, remember, are these grotesque, anomalous stone statues kept high up and hidden from the streets, they become his confidants because he actually sees himself mirrored in them. And the walls, they become his absolute sanctuary from the staring, regulating gaze of regular society. But as you might guess, this intense connection comes at a devastating cost. Hugo writes that the bells had broken the drums of his ears. His soul fell into profound night. At just 14 years old, the very bells that gave him a voice permanently took his hearing. So the really crucial takeaway here is that his deafness isn't just some random character trait. It is a direct, tragic result of his profound bond with the cathedral. It turns his isolation into this very tangible reality, effectively cutting him off entirely from the hearing world.
Section 4. The Disney Disconnect. Sanitizing the Anomaly.
Now, let's jump forward in time a bit to see how pop culture handled this incredibly complex bond. We have to talk about the wildly popular 1996 Disney animated film, because here we see a massive shift. The Disney adaptation changed the title's focus entirely to just the Hunchback, shining the spotlight squarely on his body, while simultaneously taking some pretty drastic steps to domesticate his appearance and his personality. And this leaves us to a pivotal question: why erase the deafness? In the Disney film, the directors explicitly asked that Quasimodo be able to hear, speak, and sing perfectly well. They completely removed his profound deafness, swapping out Hugo's deeply isolated character for this perfectly articulate, singing, almost toddler-esque hero. So why do that?
Well, the answer lies in a concept called narrative prosthesis. Basically, this is when narratives attempt to pull a disabled or anomalous character closer to a socially acceptable norm. By totally removing his deafness and softening his physical anomalies to make him look more cute, the filmmakers employed narrative prosthesis to soothe a normative audience. They made him palatable. But in the process, they completely lost Hugo's complex themes about marginalization and the absolute vital necessity of community.
The animated film also fundamentally altered his relationship with his stone sanctuary. The gargoyles were totally reduced from this mirrored, safe community into mere comic relief. I mean, in the film, these gargoyles even mock his physical shape, comparing him to a croissant at one point. They completely cease to be a safe reflection of his soul, and instead, they're just funny sidekicks.
Section 5. Restoring the True Bond, the 2018 stage musical. Thankfully, the Fifth Avenue Theater's 2018 stage musical adaptation took a vastly different approach. They purposefully resurrected Victor Hugo's original vision. Most notably, they cast a hard-of-hearing actor, Joshua Castile, to play Quasimodo, which brought his deafness and his physical reality right back to the forefront of the story. If we look across these three adaptations, the differences are just stark. In Hugo's original novel, the deafness is preserved, the gargoyles are silent confidants, and the cathedral is his mirrored anomaly. But in the Disney film, the deafness is erased, the gargoyles are comic relief, and the cathedral is really just a neat backdrop. Now compare that to the 2018 stage musical. The deafness is preserved, utilizing real sign language. The gargoyles act as his inner consciousness, and the cathedral is, once again, his voice and his sanctuary.
In this musical, the gargoyles brilliantly represent Quasimodo's inner consciousness. Joshua Castile interpreted the large ensemble cast of gargoyles as his own brain, basically trying to have every possible perspective to talk to. They create this idealistic, equitable, and deeply diverse internal community that signs flawlessly with him. Within the walls of Notre Dame, inside his own mind, he is no longer a linguistic minority. For once, he's finally understood.
But as amazing as that is, it sets up an absolutely devastating emotional climax. When Quasimodo realizes that Esmeralda is going to die, he also realizes that his stone community is completely powerless. The lyrics from the song Made of Stone highlight this perfectly. What do you know of all the things I feel? You're only made of stone. It's the moment he realizes that this perfectly supportive community is just an internal projection. They literally cannot step out into the real world to save the woman he loves from the cruelty of normative society. And this realization leads to a heartbreaking four-step tragic disconnect. First, he realizes his stone community cannot act in the real world. Second, he internalizes the deep cruelty that Frollo and the normative society have taught him. Third, he pushes his imaginary singing, signing gargoyles away. And finally, he faces total, devastating isolation. It is just a massive, powerful moment where he dismisses his sanctuary, symbolizing his ultimate isolation from both the hearing world and his stone haven. Which leaves us with this final, incredibly vital question to reflect on. By erasing the difficult realities of marginalized voices in our stories, do we also erase our capacity to truly understand them? When we sanitize differences just to make a story more comfortable or more kid-friendly, we lose the profound reflections of isolation and community that Victor Hugo built into the very stones of Notre Dame. The cathedral and the man were always meant to be one fragmented, imperfect, but entirely complete soul. Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer, and honestly, I hope this leaves you eager to completely rethink the familiar stories you thought you knew so well.